Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The Irish Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, has suggested that if the UK leaves the EU without a formal deal, they would have to work out a separate arrangement to protect trade and the peace process. The controversial backstop, the guarantee against a return to a hard border in Ireland if there is no long-term trade deal, is the main reason that so many MPs rejected Theresa May's EU deal in Parliament last week. Today, MPs have been putting forward more ideas on how to break the deadlock. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, John Pienaar.
Morning, Mr. Doe.
Another cabinet get-together today. None of them know how Brexit will end up. And despite last week's crushing defeat in the Commons, all of them say they're behind Theresa May's search for a deal Parliament might support. They're still backing her for now.
Anyone in that House who wants to avoid no deal as passionately as I do, wants to deliver Brexit as much as I do, and wants to avoid a people's referendum, which I think would be another extension of all of these really tough conversations, needs to come together and support the deal.
But the deadlock goes on, and today a blunt warning from Brussels that Britain leaving with no EU deal would end freedom from checks on the EU's Irish border.
If you like me to push me and speculate on what might happen in a no-deal scenario in Ireland, I think it's pretty obvious. You will have a hard border.
The border's been a big obstacle to a deal. The so-called backstop plan says the UK could stay inside EU customs rules and Northern Ireland closer to avoid stops and checks, avoid a hard border if no final trade deal is ready by the end of 2021 and maybe longer. Brexiteers fear being stuck under EU rules for years. The Democratic Unionists demand the same treatment for the whole UK. And today in Dublin, Ireland's leader insisted deal or no deal, Britain staying under EU rules was the only way to avoid a hard border.
We'd have to negotiate an agreement on customs and regulations that meant full alignment, so there would be no hard border.
The warning to Westminster was clear. If the Brexit deadlock isn't broken, it's not just a threat to Britain and the British economy, it threatens the border-free relationship that's helped underpin peace on the island of Ireland.
Should the Prime Minister rule out no deal?
Chilly, isn't it?
A no-deal Brexit is already a chilling thought to some, and ministers are split. The Justice Secretary wants Mrs May to rule out leaving with no deal. Amber Rudd wants Tory ministers to be free to vote to stop no deal happening. And rumours inside government suggest other ministers want the same. Now there are moves by MPs in both main parties to stop the UK leaving with no deal.
Business needs certainty, it needs the no deal taken off the table, and it needs that now. And the point of our amendment is to demonstrate the strength of support in Parliament for ruling out a no deal Brexit.
Will you have the Labour leadership behind you?
I'm confident across Parliament, across all parties, there is strong view we cannot crash out on the 29th of March without a deal.
The Labour leadership could swing behind the latest moves to force Mrs May's hand. Various MPs putting down proposals to stop a no-deal Brexit. Could the leadership back that now?
Yeah, Labour wants to stop a no-deal Brexit because of the damage it will do. If a resolution comes forward, in principle, yes, we can back it.
Theresa May has been under constant pressure from her Brexiteers on one side and pro-European Tories on the other. Now she's been warned that the no-deal Brexit she's consistently refused to rule out could deliver the hard Irish border all sides say they want to avoid. There's no clear way to reconcile these competing demands. Time's running out fast. Something has to give. And so far, no one's giving an inch. John Pienaar, BBC News, Westminster.
Welcome to Cardiff, where the Welsh Government today declared its diary in the Assembly for ministers to announce one by one what the impact would be of leaving the EU in 66 days without a deal. Their view is clear. They can't be ready for no withdrawal agreement, no transition period and no agreements on trade. And the Labour First Minister went further than his leader in London, saying if there is no deal by next week, he will back a second referendum. But the biggest intervention came in Brussels, where for the first time the European Commission said a no-deal Brexit would lead to a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, reports.
The French President and the German Chancellor were in Aachen today to proclaim the bonds between their two countries. Both hoped the Brexit divorce treaty would by now be settled. But Theresa May is signalling she is coming back to the EU soon to ask for more. In Brussels, the Commission spokesman showed patience was wearing thin.
Look, in all honesty, I have a terrible sense of déjà vu in all these exchanges. And I think I'm not the only one. The withdrawal agreement was agreed with the UK government, with the EU 27. It's now on the table, is not open for negotiation, and we expect the United Kingdom to tell us what they want, what they really, really want.
He said the lack of a deal made the prospect of a hard border between Ireland and Northern Ireland very real.
If you like me to push me and speculate on what might happen in a no-deal scenario in Ireland, I think it's pretty obvious. You will have a hard border.
That threat of no deal has been galvanising a network of ministers and parliamentary aides to contemplate resignation.
Should there be a free vote on a no-deal Brexit?
Very unusually, one minister on their way to cabinet all but confirmed that as they broke convention and crossed the road to answer the traditionally unanswered shouted question.
I think what we're seeing is people who want to avoid no deal and people who want to deliver Brexit and people who want to avoid a people's referendum coming together to support the deal. And that is where we need to get to, because the only way to avoid no deal is to support the deal.
Are we going to see ministerial resignations if there is no free vote on this issue?
I don't think we have to see that.
Many detect Tory MPs who voted against Theresa May's deal last week, hoping to find a reason to support it second time round.
I think that enough is enough. I've made the point. I think that actually we've got to get on, and there was serious uncertainty. There's no doubt in my mind people are very worried.
Some in the Whip's office say there are MPs out there who are looking for a good ladder to climb down. You might be one of them.
Well, I think it was important for me to say why I was against the deal. If she makes the changes, then I would be most likely to vote for it.
Those changes to the divorce deal are things Theresa May's long told MPs she can't get the EU to concede. Now she's hoping the threat of cross-party amendments that could delay Brexit by months will help win back Tory opponents of her deal.
It may well be that the people in the end who help her get this over the line are people who hold diametrically opposed views, and they're so opposed to the Brexiteer view, if you like, that actually they'll just say at the last minute, you know what, we'll take it as it is.
Well, look, I'm not sure the Prime Minister is ever going to say thank you to the House of Commons taking control of the Brexit process. She has a very clear view. But of course, as ever with Brexit, there are all sorts of unintended consequences. And so there is no doubt that actually the fact that the House of Commons has already signalled, and probably will do so again, it won't accept a no-deal outcome to Brexit, is undoubtedly making people who want there to be a Brexit, in many cases they've campaigned for decades, think very carefully about what they do next week.
Today, an icon of the 2016 EU referendum leave campaign, technology billionaire Sir James Dyson has announced his company is quitting Britain after Brexit. He'd already moved his manufacturing to the Far East and is now shifting the company headquarters as well. The company said it had nothing to do with Brexit itself.
So what would be the practical impact of a no deal? How much difference would it really make? And why is the Welsh Government, along with many business groups, so concerned that it's still on the table? If it is no deal by March 29th, many aspects of everyday life would change overnight. Initially, Britain would trade with Europe under the rules of the World Trade Organization. Our exports to the European Union would face tariffs, making them more expensive and therefore less attractive in European markets. The average tariff is likely to be 3.2%, but they could be much higher. Welsh lamb, for example, could face tariffs of 50%. UK service exports, like the City, could suffer more under WTO rules, which don't deliver the common regulations that many service businesses need. If the UK imposed reciprocal tariffs, the Bank of England thinks that could result in the cost of the weekly shop rising by 6%. New cars and clothes would also cost more. And trade would face customs checks, which could cause tailbacks at ports like Dover and Holyhead, where plans are in place for enormous lorry parks as the traffic stacks up. Bad news for fresh food that would start to go off, perhaps bringing shortages and higher prices. Even UK exports to 90 other countries like Mexico and South Korea could be affected, as they are covered by EU trade deals that would lapse for the UK. Most sensitively, the European Commission today gave an explicit warning there'd be a hard border in Northern Ireland under no deal, posing a threat to the hard-won peace settlement there. Add it all up, and the Bank of England fears a disorderly Brexit could knock 8% off national income in the first year, with house prices dropping 30%, the worst economic contraction in our post-war history. Though we would avoid paying the EU that £39 billion in the withdrawal agreement. Well, Welsh Government ministers have been outlining the potential consequences of a no-deal Brexit this afternoon. All other business here in the Senate was scrapped. Instead, there were a series of emergency statements on risks to agriculture, the economy, health and transport. Our Home Affairs correspondent, Andy Davis, is in North Wales tonight at the port of Holyhead. Andy.
Yes, well, welcome to Holyhead on a very windswept island of Anglesey. This is a major gateway to Ireland and vice versa. Several 100,000 lorries pass through here each year, 2 million passengers. And today the Welsh Government revealed that it was assessing sites nearby as potential standby locations for queuing lorries in the event of any delays following a no-deal Brexit. This on the day when they dramatically postponed business in the Assembly to line up minister after minister to paint a pretty bleak picture about what a no-deal Brexit could mean for Wales. It would be a disaster, said the First Minister. Another in his cabinet said it would have a profound impact on health and social care. UKIP, in turn, accused the Welsh Government of being scaremongering Remainers, causing the ill to feel paranoid about medical supplies, and they should hang their heads in shame. Holyhead Port on the island of Anglesey, a major gateway to Ireland, and with several 100,000 lorries passing through each year, the UK's second busiest roll-on, roll-off ferry port. If the Welsh Government's right, this is another key location vulnerable to what it claims would be the catastrophe of a no-deal Brexit. At a local truck stop this afternoon, we met one haulier from Ireland who carries pharmaceuticals to the continent and worries about the impact of any Brexit-related delays. Presumably, if you've got pharmaceuticals, well, some of that needs to get through quite quickly.
Well, that's the other point. We're sitting with a load of pharmaceutical. The fridge tank on the fridge stuff running at +5, and the fridge tank will only running for 4 days. And we have left Ireland with full tanks. And then what happens if we're sitting in the middle of a whole traffic jam and we want diesel for our fridge? Who's going to come and give us the diesel on the side of the road?
200 miles southeast of Holyhead in Cardiff, late this afternoon, the Labour Welsh Government had swept aside the scheduled agenda to decry repeatedly the prospect of a no-deal Brexit.
Here in this chamber, ministers have said time and time again that a crash-out Brexit would be catastrophic to the economy, public services and our citizens in Wales. The House of Commons may
taking their lead from Mark Drakeford, minister after minister got to their feet to present their bleak no-deal forecasts, one after the other.
I continue to be concerned about the future supply of radioisotopes to Wales in the event of a no-deal scenario.
It's important to emphasise here the likely large impact on food and other goods destined for Wales if there were significant disruption at Dover, which the UK Government expects in the event of a no-deal Brexit.
The impacts of a no-deal Brexit will be felt differently across Wales. Our rural communities will clearly bear the brunt of any loss of markets, especially in the red meat sector.
Amid accusations of scaremongering from some, the Welsh Government spoke of its preparations, checking medical supplies, doing impact assessments, raising awareness. But at Ruthin Market in North Wales today, many of these farmers claimed they'd had little guidance from government. Have you prepared in any way for a no-deal scenario?
What can you do, actually? All we can do is reduce the number of sheep, that we run on our farms.
Can you not get any access to sort of information to give you guidance?
Not really.
No, we're all a bit worried, I think.
Are you preparing in any way for a no-deal scenario?
Not at the moment, no.
Why not?
We can't change overnight. The problem is simply nobody knows what's happening.
But it's not stopping many in politics from imagining what could. And today the Welsh Government sees their opportunity to join those delving into the entrails of political stalemate to present their stark predictions for Brexit without a deal.
Well, the First Minister of Wales, Mark Drakeford, is with me now. I mean, catastrophic, you say. If there is a catastrophe on March the 29th in Wales, won't it be partly your fault? You know, people of Wales voted for Brexit. It's your job to get ready for it.
Well, we've said all along that we will do everything we can to prepare for a no-deal Brexit, but it is impossible to mitigate the harm that will do to businesses, to public services and to citizens here in Wales.
So there's no way to avoid catastrophe?
There is no way in which you can simply plan for the impact that a no-deal Brexit would bring in a way that wipes away the harm it will cause. You can mitigate it, you can do your best to do that, but the harm will be there and the harm will be real.
I mean, isn't this the epitome of you as a politician in a country that voted to leave, telling your people they got it wrong?
No, we have said all along that we are not focused on the fact of Brexit. That was determined in a referendum. We are focused on the form of Brexit. And I still say to the Prime Minister, it is not too late to negotiate a way of leaving the European Union that respects the referendum and does not do us economic harm. But
that's what you're going to say to her tomorrow?
That is what I will say to her tomorrow. That's why she should take no-deal Brexit off the table in order to do a deal.
But you've gone further than Jeremy Corbyn today in saying that if there is no deal by next week, you will back a second referendum.
Why
have you gone there?
What I have said is this. The House of Commons has a brief period of time in which it can take control and do a deal. But if the House of Commons is deadlocked, then what the answer cannot be is that leads to no deal. In those circumstances, a deadlocked House of Commons, what option is there but to go back to the people that made the original decision and get their advice again?
You then support the second referendum. How would you vote in that second referendum?
Well, I said on the floor of the Assembly, the Welsh Government was unambiguous in our advice before the last referendum. Wales's future is better secured through continued membership of the
So you do think the people got it wrong?
Well, that was our advice before.
Yeah. You still think they're wrong?
I still think that was the right thing to do. I still think it is the best advice I can offer people in Wales. But the right thing is not to be in that position.
Why isn't Jeremy Corbyn saying what you're saying?
Well, I'm responsible for my views here in Wales. I don't think that there is a great deal of difference.
But you're a Corbynite. You're close to him, aren't you?
I'm close to him. And what I've said is very close to what he has said, because he is also saying the House of Commons must have a chance. The House of Commons must try to do a deal. And if it can't do a deal, nothing is off the table.
But you've said you support a second referendum.
Only in the circumstances I've just explained.
Yes, which is looking pretty likely at the moment, isn't it?
No, I don't think we should regard it as likely. We should say the House of Commons should do its duty. Its duty is to strike a deal that protects the economy and jobs here in Wales and across the United Kingdom.
But there is nothing that Theresa May can say, is there, that she's prepared to say, because she's ruled out effectively a customs union, that will bring you round?
Well, the deal may not lie in the Prime Minister's hands. Might it? The Prime Minister doesn't have a majority for her deal in the House of Commons. The House of Commons may be able to form a majority around a different deal. That's what they should be trying to do.
Mark Drakeford, thank you very much indeed. Well, joining me now is our second party leader, the leader of the Welsh Conservatives, Paul Davies. And this illustrates what a disaster you've led the country down, haven't you? 66 days to a no deal that is going to be a catastrophe. Do you agree that it's a catastrophe first?
The people of Wales, the people of Britain, back in June 2016, voted to leave the European Union, and it is important now that we respect their wishes.
Do you think no deal is a catastrophe?
I think it's important that we leave the European Union with a deal. That's what the Prime Minister is trying to do. The Prime Minister has made it absolutely clear now that she wants to discuss the way forward with politicians from all other political parties, as well as within the Conservative Party.
I just want to nail this question of the no deal.
But I think it's important.
Yes, I get that you would prefer a deal. The government here in Wales has told the people today, no deal will be a catastrophe. There will be all sorts of disasters. Medicines won't be available. There will be chaos on the roads and in the ports. Farmers will face tariffs for their goods of up to 50%. People will go bust left, right and centre. Do you agree with that assessment?
I've just told you that it's important that we leave the European Union with a deal.
So do you agree with that assessment?
And that's what the Prime Minister is trying to do. And I'm very disappointed that Jeremy Corbyn is playing party politics with this issue.
I'm not asking you about Jeremy Corbyn. I'm asking you about the assessment of what no deal is.
He should stand up in the national interest
I'm
now.
sure he'll take your advice.
Because let me tell you, here, the First Minister, the Labour First Minister, invited me to a meeting to discuss Brexit last week. I accepted that invitation. I would expect Jeremy Corbyn to do exactly the same thing.
I don't want to talk about that right now. I want to talk about what you're telling your people here in Wales about no deal.
It's important to
tell them what it means.
It's important to leave with a deal.
What does it mean?
I've made that absolutely clear since
I've
been leader of the Welsh Conservatives
Tell
here
the
in the
people
Assembly.
what no deal means.
Well, no one knows what no deal means, but it is important that we actually leave the European Union with a deal. I've made that absolutely clear. The Prime Minister has made that absolutely clear, and that's what she is trying to do now, and what she will try to do over the next few days and the few weeks.
Paul Davis, thank you very much indeed. Well, joining me now is Abby Reader from the Wales National Farmers Union, Assembly Member Adam Price, who's the leader of Plaid Cymru, and tonight the UK Independence Party, UKIP, has put up Neil Hamilton. He has recently caused controversy by claiming that the far-right leader Tommy Robinson has been demonised by the media. He's not the leader of UKIP in the Assembly, but he is, he says, the leader of UKIP in Wales. And you believe that all of this, we'll come to that later, but you believe all of this isn't necessary, do you? When are you going to start telling the people of Wales the truth about no deal?
We've done that all along. If we leave with no deal, then that's unfortunate. I always wanted a free trade deal with the EU, but if we leave with no deal, I don't think that's a massive problem. The EU, if they impose tariffs on us, will vacate the British market for all sorts of products because they'll become uncompetitive. We can fill that gap, and then we can get on with the real business of doing free trade deals with the rest of the world.
Adam Price, what does no deal actually mean?
Well, I
you know,
think
when people are hearing UKIP saying that's what it means, what would you say it means?
Well, it's economic suicide. Look, you've got two governments, either end of the M4, different political parties, different views about Brexit, both telling us in no uncertain terms that this is going to be horrendous in so many different ways in terms of our economy. We've heard today in terms of the problems, in terms of managing medicines, all kinds of potential scenarios which would be cataclysmic. And so, you know, we've got to take that off the table.
How can you say all that list of things that happened today, that was announced today in this chamber, is just unfortunate?
Well,
I mean, we're talking about people not getting life-saving medicines, about chaos in
business. This is Project Fear
people going bust,
in overdrive.
Farmers not being unable to sell their... Well, are you saying it's
Project
not true?
Fear, you know,
tariffs
of all,
for sheep meat would
can
be
I get a word
50%?
in?
I'm just asking.
First of all, you know, we import from the EU 3 times as much agricultural produce as we export to them. So there's a big gap in the market which will be opened up if the EU introduced tariffs on trade in agricultural products. Just take cars as another example. You know, we import 46 billion pounds worth of cars from the EU in the course of the year. We export 18 billion to them. So they are going to be the losers. I mean, we didn't want this, but if that's how they want to play it, then so be it.
Let's hear from the farmers, because a no-deal scenario would decimate, literally wipe out upland farming, you know, in Wales.
Well, let's hear from
it's
the farmer.
absolutely irresponsible.
Abby Reader, what do you make of what you're hearing?
Crashing out with a no deal will absolutely decimate Welsh agriculture. We are dealing with perishable goods. If we crash out with no deal and suddenly we cannot trade, these perishable goods are going to go off.
So why did so many farmers vote for Brexit in Wales?
Because lots of the issues that surround, say, the Common Agricultural Policy, lots of issues, I suppose lots of personal issues as well.
Do you think they didn't realise what it would mean?
Perhaps. I think that the information that came out during the debate was not adequate enough for us to make a sensible decision.
Look, I think, you know, Brexit, the Brexit vote, right, was the wrong answer to the right question. Many people in rural communities, in post-industrial communities, former coalfield areas right across the UK, feeling exasperated, feeling neglected, you know, feeling left high and dry. Unfortunately, the reality is Brexit will impoverish those communities even further. And many people are realising that in communities, including here in Wales.
Go on.
Ireland at the moment exports 82% of its milk to the UK, 49% of its beef. They won't be able to do that if the EU insists on imposing tariffs against everybody in the EU. So there are gaps in the market which will open up so that those farmers who currently are selling to the EU will be able to sell.
Choice.
Well, no,
do you understand how it works?
Post-Brexit, if the EU insists on screwing up the agricultural economy in Europe, then so be it for them. We will be able to cope with the consequences. We've got £39 billion and we won't be paying them by way of an exit fee as well.
There's no guarantee from the UK government that they will not allow cheap, unprotected, unknown origin food to come into this country. There's no guarantee of that.
Well, and what would that mean for you if that happens? Just lay it out.
If we see cheap food coming into this country, competing with our high standards, our high welfare standards, our high environmental standards, we can tell you, everything about the origin of this food. If we see cheap food coming in and consumers are faced with a choice where they have a limited budget, they're trying to spend sensibly, and they pick up that cheap food, how can we possibly compete?
Adam Price, isn't the trouble that, we've got 4 party leaders here today, and 3 of you will remain and think Brexit is a mistake, and only 1 of you is on the same side as the people of Wales.
Look,
and he's pretty marginal now. His party's all over the place. So,
well, look. I've said, look, the public opinion is shifting, right? Okay, because they're seeing the reality, not the fantasy, right, that was set out for them. The reality that is facing is only weeks away. We could be looking at a cataclysm of huge proportions, right? So politics has to deliver a solution out of this impasse.
Look, for 2 years.
Yeah. Look, the way to test your question. What do the people think now is to take it back to the people. The most dramatic development here today, you dragged it out of the First Minister again. He said there's got to be a vote in 7 days' time. And, a loyal Corbynista, as you said, has shifted his opinion. Andy Burnham in Manchester, Sadiq Khan, now Mark Drakeford, all the senior people in elected positions in the Labour Party saying to Jeremy Corbyn, because they're not calling time on the Prime Minister, they're calling time on Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party in Westminster is the biggest roadblock to finding a solution. And the only solution possible is to take it back to the people.
And Neil Hamilton, isn't the democratic disaster here that the party that appears to be with the way people voted in this country is now splintering off to the far right, has got Tommy Robinson, an extremist who's been convicted of serious crimes, advising you, a man you share a platform with. Are you not
Robinson is not a member of UKIP.
That he is associated with your party?
Tommy Robinson is not a member of UKIP. He is not relevant.
No, he's your advisor.
He's not my advisor at all.
Well, he's your party leader.
I don't know Tommy Robinson from Adam.
You shared a platform with him.
Well, it was a Brexit rally, and I shared the platform with about 10 other people. So this is a complete distraction from the real issue. The real issue today is what's going to be the impact of a no-deal Brexit on the people of Wales and the people of the United Kingdom.
It is the reason why.
And there is nothing to fear.
Nigel Farage
there is
left
nothing
UKIP.
to fear from a no-deal Brexit.
All the credible people in your party have left.
Or the people of the United Kingdom, because the EU is prepared to cut off its nose to spite its face, perhaps. But we will take advantage of the opportunities that they open up.
When all the credible people in your party have left and are embarrassed by what's happened?
I'm an elected representative of the people of Wales in the National Assembly.
You have a choice.
And I will fulfil my mandate.
As to who you stand with.
And here we argue not just about Brexit, but all sorts of issues that affect the daily lives and livelihoods of the people of Wales. And UKIP has unique solutions to all of them, which the other parties don't share. So, we are far more than a Brexit party.
That remains to be seen. Thank you all very much indeed for joining us. Adam Price, Neil Hamilton and Abby Reader.
Well, the big beasts of the international business world are turning up at Davos in Switzerland for this year's World Economic Forum. There's plenty for them to fret about: economic slowdown in China, President Trump's trade wars, and of course now how much of a shock Brexit will deliver to the world economy. But underlying all of this is the criticism that the World Economic Order that they represent simply doesn't work in favour of the majority. Our business editor, Siobhan Kennedy, is on her way to Davos. Siobhan, thanks for joining us.
Well, John, I am here in the snowy Swiss mountains where the World Economic Forum got underway today in Davos. I have to say, a very different atmosphere this year to the bullish confidence of last year when the world economy was firing on all cylinders. This year, they meet under a shroud of global uncertainty and rising turmoil and trade tensions. They did try today to kick off with a bit of pizzazz, if you like. Prince William, no less, interviewing Sir David Attenborough. on the subject that we're told Davos delegates care most about, and that is climate change. But as is ever the case here in Davos, where idealism butts up against capitalism, they were followed immediately thereafter by the new hardline Brazilian President Bolsonaro, dubbed by many as the Trump of the tropics. Now, he used his debut on the world stage here in Davos to make clear this message that Brazil and the rich Amazon rainforest is very much open to big business, even as he tried to say that he would protect the environment. Let's see what he had to say.
Temos a maior biodiversidade do mundo.
We have the world's largest biodiversity and abundant mineral riches. We want partners with technologies so that these can be turned into progress and development for all. Our actions, make no mistake, will attract you big business opportunities which will not only benefit Brazil, but will benefit the whole world.
Well, he managed to make it here, but I think what has defined Davos so far has been the absence of the other big world leaders. President Trump, of course, Macron of France, Xi Jinping of China, and of course Theresa May, all of whom were due to be here, but have been detained by their own domestic crises. Now, on that front, after the dismay, really, of business leaders last night at the lack of a plan B to remove no deal off the table, Theresa May hosted a conference call with business leaders today, a confidential call, I'm told, where she tried to reassure them that her plan to drive a consensus to get her party and the DUP on board was the best way of removing a no deal. I imagine the atmosphere, John, was as cold as the snow you can see here around me. And I think we can expect some pretty tough questioning for the Chancellor, Philip Hammond, and Liam Fox, both of whom are coming to Davos this week to meet business leaders and try once again to reassure them.
Siobhan Kennedy around Davos, thank you very much for joining us. Join us now is Ali Renison, who's head of Europe and Trade Policy at the Institute of Directors. So turning to our domestic concerns, no customs union, no single market, no extension to Article 450, no removal of a no deal from the table. Is that the kind of flexibility the IOD is looking for from the Prime Minister?
I think you have to add one more string to that bow, and it's the fact that we have so little information coming out from government on how to actually plan. The only reason I think it's really important to stress this, the only reason that you have businesses talking about whether you might need any kind of extension is because we're staring down the barrel of no deal. We talk about Parliament, there not being a majority for it, but it's still the default legal exit date. And how are you asking people to plan with such little information? So, you know, if the Prime Minister can bring back those changes, absolutely get that deal through. But we don't know at what point when that actual next vote, not the one happening next week, but the next vote to ratify the deal will actually happen, and the clock is ticking down. Well,
you've been in touch with Downing Street. Well, what are you hearing?
Well, everything is going on. The same thing that the Prime Minister says in private, she says in public. She talks about the fact that we're having these sort of three areas she wants to get changes on: changes to the backstop, changes to involve Parliament more, and changes to improve, sort of get more assurances on workers' rights. What we don't know still is exactly at what point she's going to go to Brussels, and the reason that that's important for us is to understand at what point the whole process of trying to get those changes begins, and whether that means that it's likely to come back and have the vote pass through Parliament, or whether we're going to need that sort of potential technical extension to Article 50.
Does the Institute of Directors see the guarantee that no deal will be accepted? Is that an absolute for you?
Well, I think the Prime Minister is right that it's impossible to completely take it off the table because it takes two to tango in effect. And it's interesting that, you know, it's not just the government that's talking about Parliament having voted it down, increasing that risk. The day after the vote was failed in the House of Commons, you had the EU saying that the risk of a disorderly exit is now higher. So it's, you know, I think you hear a lot about people talking about being a false choice, but right now we are looking at that exit date, and it doesn't look like it's changing anytime soon.
And I mean, what is it about trading under WTO terms that worries everybody?
Well, it depends on what sector you're in. Obviously, the issue that gets the most attention is what happens to goods that are flown between the UK and the EU, because that's where you see the potential for the most disruption. We know that no deal generally is not a desirable outcome. We just don't know exactly how bad it's going to look like on the day. And that's why you have businesses saying they're not ready. You particularly hear it from the people who are responsible for moving goods back and forth, saying we don't have the information on the customs processes, how they're going to work. We don't even know, for example, at this point, if the UK government is going to impose the same tariffs that we currently face going into the EU. So it's very difficult to be able to plan without that information.
And the central piece of information is the 29th of March. Do you really believe that is the moment we will leave the European Union?
Depends on what happens in Parliament. I mean, again, I come back to the fact that it is set out. We know that Parliament doesn't necessarily have a majority in it to agree to have that no deal go ahead, but it's still the default exit date. And until that changes, that's what people have to try and plan for. But they're a bit constrained in their ability to do so.
Ali Renison from the Institute of Directors, thank you very much indeed for joining us.